If you were watching the Microsoft press conference yesterday, you know that Sunset Overdrive, Xbox One exclusive, is having a big showing here at E3 2014. Joining me now on stage is Ted Price, founder of Insomniac Games. Ted, big E3 for you guys in Sunset Overdrive.
It is. It's been really exciting for us to have people come by, play the game, show off, and for us to show off what makes it different.
And today we're showing it off. We've got a guy driving in the back. He's going to be jumping into some gameplay, and we're
Ryan
just going to...
Schneider, our brand development director, is playing right now. He's actually looking out over one of the spaces in the game. This is a big open world, and you get missions throughout. What we are doing here is trying to make our way to the roller coaster on the far side to aid one of the friendly factions in the game, because there's an enemy faction who has stolen
friends
something.
in this game?
You have friends. But what we're demonstrating here is just that this is not your traditional shooter. You are moving through the world with velocity and aggression. You are grinding, bouncing, somersaulting, vaulting throughout the world. And this really is important when it comes to the combat in the game.
And it seems like, that grinding, it's, you guys are doing a lot to make it easy for folks to get airborne, get bouncing off stuff, get on these grinds, but
there's a reason for it. Ryan's going to probably demonstrate here. He's actually choosing the one-handed dragon, which is one of our favorite weapons in the game. This is a weapon that shoots these big firecrackers, and it lights nearby enemies on fire.
So I see.
Now, one of the challenges that Ryan's going to face here is that he's on the ground. And when you're on the ground in this game, the enemies can be pretty brutal. And even though he's using the vinyl launcher, which is our wrecker gun, which bounces off, has wreckers that bounce between enemies, these guys will destroy him. But we make it fun to die. And so when you come back and respawn,
boom,
you
there
respawn
you're back.
in interesting fashions.
Just in a rocket, but in some of the trailers you guys have shown, like getting dropped off in a van, just chucked out of it, or coming out of a sarcophagus.
That's right.
I love the playful attitude.
Well, fun trumps realism in this game. And here's another example. Ryan has just activated the Pandora's box. It has decided to throw out a whole bunch of lawn gnomes who are fighting on his behalf against all of the swarming. Yes, right. Now you'll notice too that Ryan's spending a lot of time grinding, and that's because as you do more and more complex moves in the world, you build up the style meter, which is on the top right-hand side of the screen. The more you build it up, the more amps you trigger. Here's another one of our traps. It's the flame trap in the game. As you start building up your style and activating amps, you get new abilities, and these are crafted abilities in the game. Here's another example of one of our environmental toys. That was the test of strength that Ryan just used to electrify nearby enemies.
Doesn't look safe.
As he was meleeing, you probably saw some tornadoes moving out from his melee. Actually, that dodge roll there is another amp that's attached to the hero. Amps in general, though, you craft them, and they can be attached to your hero or your weapons, which adds a lot of strategy to combat, because there are a ton of amps that you can choose from in the game.
But you got to customize the amps you want to coincide with your play style.
That's correct.
And I noticed there's a lot of, these things are blowing up on this carousel ride. Talk a little bit about, destructibility, how things explode, and the way that you can sort of leave your mark on the environment.
Well, yeah, the environment's interactive. So we give players a lot of opportunity to experiment and have fun with all of the little, call it, Easter eggs that we put around the world. And given that this is a big open world, there are a ton of things to discover for the players. Now, throughout the game, you're going on missions and quests and following a pretty deep storyline. And this, your player is helping these friendly factions in the game uncover what's been going on in the city. Just to get back to gameplay for a second, here is the Herker. This is one of our larger enemies in the game. He's a former construction worker who mutated around this big digger arm.
He really did, and it's like the way the sinews and muscles are sort of around the metal and it's exposed. Like, there's so much there's so much attention to detail here. It's really just popping off the screen.
Well, we're having fun with this. I mean, this is us at Insomniac letting loose and really adhering to that mantra that fun trumps realism. And at the same time, this is a game that will challenge players, because these enemies are tough. There are a lot of them, and when it comes to the bigger enemies, they're not your standard big enemies either. This guy in particular is agile. He will climb buildings after you, he will charge you, he will do a lot of damage, but he's also susceptible to fire weapons. And so what Ryan
He's been on fire for like 2 minutes now.
Yes, right. Ryan's using the flaming compensator, which is our shotgun. He just killed him there by firing out a couple of TN teddies, which are exploding teddy bears that you can launch from an extinguisher. Now, Ryan's going to make his way over to the roller coaster by bouncing and grinding through another fairly frenetic section of the amusement park. Here, being on the ground can mean death. So he's getting up onto the wires and grinding by.
Yeah, so that's one of my questions is, how are you guys encouraging players who, from falling into that sort of familiar third-person shooter trap of, I stay on the ground, I walk around, I shoot enemies.
One of the ways we do it is by having players earn style. I mentioned the style meter, and that's really important when it comes to combat, because as you're crafting these amps in the game, the way to activate them is to build your style meter, and you can actually max it out, and when that happens, you're triggering these epic amps, which just do ridiculous amounts of destruction around you, but in a way that's very over the top and very Sunset Overdrive stylized. So what Ryan's doing right now is he's actually on the big roller coaster, which has been taken over by scabs, this other faction in the game. So he's trying to take out the towers that surround the central tower where the Scab King is hiding out, and blow up some of these roller coaster cars that have scabs riding in them. Along the way, the OD'd, who these overcharged delirium drinkers have taken over, they've been fighting against the scabs, and so they're climbing up all over the roller coaster.
Okay, so you got a couple different factions at war then?
We
the
do.
Scabs and the
They're
OD?
fighting each other as well. But an important aspect of this particular element or part of the game is that every one of our missions has unique mechanics and story-driven themes behind them. So we want to keep things very mix it up for players, and we take that sort of handcrafted approach that we have in previous games like the Ratchet and Clank series to make sure that players are always wondering what's going to happen during the next mission.
Absolutely, and I am honestly wondering what gun is going to come up next. I don't know. Folks who are fans of GameSpot hopefully know the Gun Show. It's a show I started just sort of looking at arsenals in games and how to use them and how cool they are, and the game that inspired it was Resistance 2 and you guys. So I am super thrilled anytime they whip out a new weapon and just to see what it does.
You will get a lot of Insomniac specials in this game. So what we can show now, if we have some time, is Chaos Squad. Chaos Squad is our multiplayer element of the game. It's a big multiplayer experience where you and 8 friends are earning loot, you are working together to save Sunset City. And the way you do this is you play through the open world, just like you are in campaign, but with friends. And along the way, you are going on these missions that involve combat, traversal, scavenger hunts, competition. And as you succeed in every mission, you get a choice of, in terms of which mission you will go on next.
Oh, interesting. So it's a branching, kind of choosing your way through?
Yeah, you're voting on a series, a lot of random missions that come up. And that vote is actually important because at the very end of your mission sequence, you go to what we call night defense. This is a over-the-top explosive round where you and your 8 friends are defending vats of overcharge from marauding OD'd. And at the very end, if you succeed, then you win rewards, new weapons, new vanity, new amp recipes, new cash, overcharge, that you can actually take back into the single-player campaign.
Okay.
But it's a big experience, and there's a lot of variety within it. Here at E3, we are showing just the night defense, which is, again, this nighttime, over-the-top,
everyone's descending on this one area, or is it, how big is this area that you're sort of, I guess it's centered around those vats, the overdrive vats.
So you can venture out away from the vats if you want to, but then things start to get difficult. You need to work together to keep the OD'd out of the base.
And before this, I'm just imagining, we saw yesterday during the press conference the sort of 4-player Assassin's Creed running in a pack and really, cutting their way through. I'm trying to picture that with 8 Sunset Overdrive players running their way through the city, and it just seems like mayhem.
Well, you know what? Because their players have such agility, because you can grind and balance and vault, it's actually really fun to run with 7 other people and watch them as they are screaming down the streets on power lines or bouncing from car to car. And there's a lot of some races in the game as well, so you're racing through the city with your friends.
Very cool.
One thing that we hear asked a lot is, this looks like an explosive game. There's so much going on.
I think the word explosive and over the top has been said.
A lot.
200% more in this demo than in many others.
So people ask, where's the strategy? Where's the depth in the game? And we have a lot of enemy variety. We have a lot of opportunity to change up combat for players using a very widely diverse array of weapons. Add amps on top of that, which is the crafting system, and add the traversal, and it's a very different type of shooter. In fact, this is us changing the rules when it comes to shooters and offering shooter fans something different in terms of what shooter fans love. And a deviation from perhaps what we've been playing for the last decade.
Yeah, I'll say. Yeah, and it's, you guys obviously taking a pretty tongue-in-cheek jab at that during the press conference yesterday, and the soldier guy parked behind his crate,
Well, you think about what have we been doing for the last 10 years? We've been cowering behind cover, right?
Yeah.
And we pop up and we shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, we've made shooters, right, which are cover-based at Insomniac, and our goal was to change things up, to throw the old rules out the window and try something different. And that goes for the tone as well in this game. We poke fun at ourselves. We poke fun at cultural conventions.
Yep.
We break the fourth wall all the time. The character himself is very self-aware, but at the same time, it's not just the character, it's you in the game. We allow players to customize their characters however they want from the very beginning, whether it's gender, ethnicity, body style, vanity, hairstyle, and you can change it up at any time in the game as well.
All right. So I think you've been showing off mainly a male character in sort of the demos, but albeit with all sorts of crazy hairstyles. But there's a lot more range there in terms of what you can do to customize.
Absolutely, and we're showing off that today in Chaos Squad as well, at Night Defense. We have a wide variety of characters that our designers just decided to create for E3. So players will be able to choose from a very broad palette of character choices.
Very cool, Ted. Well, Sunset Overdrive, seeing it in action and hearing you talk about it, I feel like I'm getting a better sense for what the game's all about. Any chance of a demo ahead of the game's release so the players can really get kind of a feel for this quite divergent game style you guys are trying on?
Well, right now, all I can talk about is the demo we have here.
Okay.
And there's a great chance for people to get their hands on it, get familiar with the, again, different way of traversing through the world, and play with their friends. Really, experience some of the weapons and some of the depth that we have in the game.
Fantastic, Ted. Thank you so much for coming on, showing off Sunset Overdrive. Folks, we are going to go check in with the GameSpot news.